Hello, welcome to the fourth episode of the Lockdown Podcast for the Sports Gazette. I'm Alex Bartlett and I'm back again with two expert guests again. I'm here with former Sports Gazette writer Jack Nevill. Hi Jack, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. And fellow writer this year, Ben Chapal from South Carolina himself, North Carolina. My bad.
Get that straight. But yeah, cheers. Thanks. Glad to be here, man.
It's good to have you, Ben. Good to have you, and I hope you guys are both doing well in lockdown. We're here for an NFL draft special today. Obviously, it's nice to have some sport coming up in these challenging times. We've all been waiting for it. I know it's not live sport, but it's something to talk about and something to get our teeth into. And I know these boys are very keen. Ben's a Carolina Panthers fan, and Jack, I believe, are you Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, born and raised.
Big draft for you guys with
yeah.
So plenty of stuff to get into. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. We will get into that in a bit. But first of all, as I ask all my guests, what have you guys found as your quarantine/lockdown guilty pleasure that you found that you've gone to in these challenging times? So I'll come to you first, Jack.
A lot of NBA 2K, a lot of Fortnite, and a lot of very excessive binging of shows. The guilty part is upwards of 8 episodes a day of a certain show once I get rolling. So that's the guilty part of it, basically. But standard fare for most people, I assume. Lots of video games, lots of TV.
Yeah, that's the common theory, and I could get on board with the 2K. I took the bullet when they reduced it to $19.99 earlier in the start of the lockdown. I was like, I'm in. And you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much most of the, along the same lines. I've got a 2K in my career, so that's kind of sucking the life out of me right now. But yeah, I mean, sports documentaries, just started watching The Last Dance, which I'm really excited about Michael Jordan and the 97 Bulls. But yeah, I mean, just, hanging out of the house, trying to stay busy and, trying to stay connected to sports as well.
Yeah, I think you got the thumbs up from both of us there. I know I watched the first 2 episodes and already can't wait for next week. So yeah, that's top quality stuff. Right, yeah, and that would have been my addition that I added this week. That's pretty much the way the week's gone. NBA, 2K, bit of FIFA here and there, and then a bit of Last Dance. Right, we'll get straight into it. Obviously, it's been a long off season, but first of all, I wanted to sort of ask you boys: do you think the NFL was right to hold the draft? I know a lot of general managers have come out and said that they would have liked them to just postpone it. They're not going to get the same process. I suppose it is a level playing field for everyone. You first, Jack. Do you think they were right to go ahead with it? Obviously, from our point of view, yes, but from a personnel point of view,
yeah, I think as long as they could do it safely, which I think they figured out a way to do it. Yes, I think it's fine, because the biggest argument against it I've heard is that it upsets the competitive balance. Because obviously, if you're one of the New York teams, that state is on a way harsher lockdown than a lot of other states. But then the counterpoint is it's kind of just sport, and there's already a competitive disadvantage because stupid teams make stupid picks and stupid mistakes. So it's I always feel like if you're a good team who can figure it out, you'll figure it out. And we'll see the standard guys like the Patriots, although not necessarily the Patriots, but the Ravens and the Eagles and teams like that, they'll still make good picks and they'll figure it out. So to me, as long as it could be conducted safely, which I think it has been done, there's no reason it can't go ahead. And there was lots of articles. I think Amy Trask at The Athletic wrote really good stuff about it, how they'll figure it out and it's fine to go ahead with it, I think.
Yeah, great message. And you, Ben, obviously with family in the States and friends in the States, what have you been hearing? Obviously, it's not been too bad in North Carolina, the virus spread, but are people happy that the draft's going along? Obviously, NBA, NHL, and MLB all on complete shutdown, so it's a bit of normality is much needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are just anything that feels normal, and obviously people are craving sport and just something to talk about, the sports storylines more than anything. So I think most sport fans are probably very happy that this is going on. I don't see why it wouldn't, to be honest. Most of it can be done remotely via phone calls. But yeah, I'm glad it's happening, and I don't see any problems with it, to be honest.
Yeah, bang on. And obviously, the first sort of week of the lockdown happened to be the start of the league year, and there was a lot of debate about whether that would go ahead. It did, and I think thankfully for most of us, I know I was refreshing the Twitter feed like no other free agency year. You're obviously refreshing it every year, but this year it was just like nothing else to do. I was checking my phone for every update, notifications on about 20 different Twitter accounts. I think I went a bit mad. But it was a big year, and I know, Jack, you mentioned the Patriots. Is it a new era? Because obviously, are the Patriots the same Patriots? Obviously, you'll be pleased to see the back of Tom Brady, being a Dolphins fan for life.
Absolutely.
What did you make of the move, and what did you make of it for Brady and for the Patriots?
I feel like it's been coming for a few years. We had the Belichick book by Ian O'Connor, where he sort of put it out there that that there were a few problems dating back to the Garoppolo trade. A lot of it is where it sort of started to simmer, where it very much seems as though Belichick wanted to keep Garoppolo and let Brady walk. Robert Kraft intervened, said absolutely not. We had Seth Wickersham, I think, ESPN writer, had a lot of this stuff as well. I think that was 2 years ago with the trainer and all this sort of thing. So it's been bubbling for a while. I think Belichick probably, if he was honest, has wanted to let him walk for a few years now. He probably didn't want to give him his last contract. And then Brady eventually was just like, look, I want to be treated like the star I am. The Patriots weren't willing to do it. So he was like, okay, we'll leave. I don't think there's hatred there or anything like that. I think it was just one of those things where it's just time. I think Brady he's clearly on the downswing as far as his physical talents go. We saw that last year. Got about as much as you could possibly expect from him last year, I think. So, but then again, like especially with the breaking Gronkowski trade yesterday, the Tampa Bay offense is just so absurdly stacked now. So I think if he's going to carry on at a high level, this is the place to do it. He's got an excellent coach and he's got a bunch of talent around him. For the Patriots, I think it will just be business as usual. They'll find a way to win sort of 8, 9 games, maybe sneak into the playoffs. Like, I don't think Belichick's one to do a rebuild. I think they've got this Stidham guy that there's a lot of chat whether they like him or not. I really liked him coming out. I thought it was the classic sort of distressed asset where he was really good with a good offense at Auburn in college, but then he came to, I think it was, he was good at Baylor, I think, and then went to Auburn with an offense that didn't suit him at all, and it just didn't work out. And so they're trying to sort of rehab his abilities there because he was talked about as like a first-round guy at times in the years leading up to his draft. So I think it's really interesting. I think it's the sort of thing where I think the whole argument of can they survive without each other is silly. It's like they're both the best to ever do it at their thing. So more than anything, I'm just excited to see what happens. Not sure Brady has too much left, to be honest, but I'm excited to see with the amount of like an unprecedented amount of talent around him than what he's had his whole career. So it should be really exciting.
And you, Ben, obviously you're going to be seeing a lot of Brady or Panthers over the next, probably next 2-3 seasons. What do you make of the fit in Tampa with Bruce Arians, with the weapons, with Evans, Goodwin, OJ Howard potentially, and obviously now Gronk? What do you make of that fit? And are you afraid?
Hey man, it's gonna be Tampa Bay down there. I think that's what he trademarked, or is it Tampa Brady, something like that. He was trying to come up with some sort of cheesy T-shirt design. But no, it's scary, man. What did you say?
I said I think he trademarked both of them.
Okay. Yeah. Either way, it's Tampa Bay down there. It's going to be scary. We haven't really seen too much from Tom Brady, especially this past season, but he basically had no receivers whatsoever down the field for him. Like you said, he's going to be surrounded by more talent than he's ever had in his entire career. I can tell you that Godwin-Evans combo is absolutely deadly. I don't know if Tom still has the arm, but it'll be interesting, especially with two talented tight ends, Gronk and OJ Howard, if they can create a sort of complex offense that can really break down some of these defenses.
Yeah, what interested me about the Gronk trade, obviously that developed very quickly yesterday evening here in the UK, is Bruce Arians not traditionally a tight end friendly offense. And obviously lots of talk that Howard was going to be tradable. That's interesting to see how he will integrate Gronk. But I think it is very much Tom Brady's team for the next 2 years, and they are all in, and it's going to be very interesting to see that. Now, obviously, plenty of moves in free agency, but as this is a draft special, we're not going to focus on every single move. I thought I'd just get a few little nuggets from you guys. So come to you, Jack, first. What was your favourite signing / deal? Obviously, best deal. We know who got the best deal. We are excluding Bill O'Brien from all of these.
I excluded the low-hanging fruit.
We're excluding Hopkins.
We can talk about it. We'll talk about it. So for those who don't know, Bill O'Brien. So most teams in the NFL obviously are run by the head coach of the team, and they have a general manager. There are exceptions, obviously Belichick in New England. And Bill O'Brien, the head coach of the Houston Texans, has full control over the transactional side of things as well. He's made some questionable trades over the last few years. The Laramie Tunsil trade with yourselves, Jack, to think about it. But this year, on the opening day of free agency, it broke that DeAndre Hopkins, a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL, for some probably the best, was being traded for David Johnson, who is a declining running back who's been savaged by injuries since his first 2 seasons, really, and a second-round pick, which really took to Arizona, which really was, I think it just blew the whole NFL world up. Ben, I know you said you were going to talk about that. What was your first response to that trade?
Well, I mean, they gave away an all-time, I would say, potential future Hall of Famer wide receiver, and they're receiving a running back who hasn't really performed for the past 2 seasons. So real head scratcher, but I mean, I don't think anybody is surprised that Bill O'Brien would cook up some stupid trade like this. And interestingly, Hopkins said in an interview that he basically had no relationship with Bill O'Brien. So possibly for Hopkins, it's the best for his career. I just feel really bad for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see what happens. Obviously, a big contract year sort of next year. So whether he hangs around, I'm sure he will, because you're not going to let him get out the door.
They'll franchise tag him into oblivion, basically.
Yeah. Right. So I'll come to you, Jack. We'll get straight into the favourite signings. What was your favourite deal / signing?
So you'll notice a trend with me going forward with a lot of these favourite things. I certainly have a type when it comes to NFL players, but my 2 favourites, simply because they're just the perfect meeting of value, talent, and fit, is Calais Campbell getting traded from the Jaguars to the Ravens for a 5th-round pick, and Jarrell Casey going from the Titans to the Broncos for like a 6th or 7th, I think it was. Absolute peanuts for both of them. They're both still maybe not elite, but I think Campbell probably still is elite at his position, and Casey's still right up there as far as 3-4 defensive ends or nose tackles go. So I love the fits, I love the value, and I love the talent of the guys. Yes, they're a bit older, but for teams like Denver, they have their quarterback now in Drew Lock, you'd think, for the next couple of years. So it's win-now mode for them. The Ravens, of course, with the MVP. And the brilliant roster, they're in win-now mode too. So 2 moves that just make perfect sense and costing them basically nothing.
Yeah, spot on it. And you, Ben, did you have any moves you particularly stood out to you as difference makers?
Well, I guess this is more of just in general. I think the Bills have made some nice signings, especially on the defensive side of things. They've picked up a lot of ex-Panthers players. Vernon Butler, the defensive tackle, and Josh Norman at cornerback. They also added Mario Addison, who I think had a decent number of sacks this past season. So they're really shoring up that defensive side of things. And then obviously the big headliner was the Stephon Diggs move. So I think that the Bills are smelling blood in the water in the AFC East. And they're really going to go for it this year.
Yeah, sort of a big year. So they thought about that big year for those 4 first, not so much Lamar Jackson, but Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, and obviously Josh Allen. Massive year. Are they franchise quarterbacks? And the only way you're going to find that out is if you give them weapons. And we'll go on to that a bit with with the Jets later. My favourite was actually sort of, I think very rarely you see win-win trades. But for me, I love what the 49ers and Colts did. I think that's one of the scenarios where you get a win-win scenario with DeForest Buckner for the 13th overall. It gets to a point when you have these rosters that you just can't keep paying your star players. Yeah. And with the 49ers D-line, I don't think Buckner will be missed massively there in return for the 13th pick. Obviously, we'll see what they do with that 13th pick. But I think it could be used to get Shanahan another weapon for that offense, and obviously Jimmy G. And I think Buckner is an instant plug and play for the Colts. Obviously, he's disrupted and adds some juice to that defense that obviously was not there so much last year, but a defense that was vastly improving throughout the last sort of 2 or 3 seasons. So he could be the step they needed to take. So that's the best signings. We'll go on to something that we didn't like as much now. So you, Jack, what was your worst deal?
I hate to say it, Ben, but my least favourite one was the Teddy Bridgewater contract. Simply, I don't think he's that good. Like 3 years, $63 million. That's like decent, if not like it's sort of mid-range starter franchise money for a quarterback. And like, I like Teddy Bridgewater. Like his story is excellent, and he's a decent quarterback. But I would probably rather have Tyrod Taylor on his contract if I'm the Chargers. So, I mean, the obvious worst move is the Hopkins-Johnson trade that we've talked about. But this one, for me, it's just, I think it's the sort of move where they'll go sort of 6-10. Bridgewater will be okay, but nothing special. And they'll be like, oh, now we're looking for another QB in the draft or something. So it's the sort of move that Michael Lombardi always says, who's like an ex-GM writer for The Athletic. The worst sort of moves is when you sign someone and then you're still looking for someone at that position. And to me, that's what this Bridgewater deal is going to look like in a year, I think.
I mean, I was going to talk about the Panthers later, but I'll hop into it right now. I 100% agree. The Bridgewater just seems like they slapped a Band-Aid on the problem, to be honest. Yeah. I actually would have been I'm personally a big Cam Newton guy, so I personally would have liked to have seen them just like let him play out his last year of contract. I think it was only $20 million left. And then if they really needed to draft somebody, they can always go to the draft. But the Teddy Bridgewater move just seemed a bit strange. They could have gone in for somebody like that even next year. But I mean, David Tepper has obviously made it known that he wants to make some changes around here. So Matt Rule is getting his guys. It's hard for me to picture how it's going to play out from here.
Yeah.
And we'll get on to it later, but if Tua's there at 7, or which could be a possibility, do you think there's a chance you pull the trigger?
I'm intrigued. I'm a bit worried about his durability, to be honest. Which is kind of funny because, you know, this is a franchise that essentially turned their back on their best ever player for durability problems. And if they then go and draft a QB that just had issues with durability in college, that raises question marks for me. But I mean, Tua's a great player, man. It does just come down to how long he can last in this league.
And while we're on Cam, Jack, what do you think Cam's future holds? Both of you, actually. I'll come to you first, Jack.
If I was the Chargers, I see absolutely no reason not to sign him. Nothing's going to happen before the draft, obviously. Yeah. We're a day before, but that was obvious a few weeks ago that a lot of these free agents, because there's still a lot of good players out there, they're just going to wait and see till after the draft. You'll see probably Andy Dalton's future be resolved. Cam Newton, obviously. So I think the Chargers makes the most sense. Obviously, with those new uniforms, he'll look absolutely incredible in them. But just as a fit as well, they have Tyrod there. Similar-ish style of players where mobility is their key thing and good, like big, powerful arms. So I think the Chargers is the best fit for him. The Patriots would be very interesting if they don't go with a quarterback in the draft. So, I mean, Cam Newton is a brilliant player, and I don't see any reason why, with a proper rehab and plenty of time off, he can't get back to 90% of what he used to be. We're not going to see 2015 Cam again. That was sort of an aberration with his career. Like, that was the best you could ever expect from Cam. And I don't think he'll reach those levels again because that was just insane. But you could get 85% of that, I think. So any team that picks him up, I think, will be very pleased as well because he'll be cheap this year and then you have to give him just normal starter money if you want to keep him after that. So I see no reason why there won't be a good market for him after the draft.
And Ben, what did you make of the other moves that Tepper did? It's obviously Robbie Anderson, probably the headline there, and a good little pickup. Yeah. And that receiving corps of DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson is one of the better ones in the league now. Obviously, Curtis Samuel as well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
speed.
DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson. That's a dynamic young receiving core, like you said. And it'll be interesting. They're basically rebuilding their offensive scheme. So I mean, next year is going to look a lot different. But it's always good to have a good young core of receivers that are willing to learn. So that's the one positive I will say. I'll also say that I'm glad that we locked down McCaffrey for some big money, highest ever paid running back in the league. But yeah, I mean, there's two takeaways that I've gathered from this off season so far. One is just how common good quarterbacks are becoming in this league. I mean, if you went back 10 years ago and somebody like Cam Newton was up on, as a free agent, I think he would have gotten picked up pretty quickly. Now, maybe they saw something in his physical that scared them away. I was convinced that the Patriots were going to pick him up. That seemed like a Belichick sleazy type of move there. But yeah, I mean, quarterbacks are everywhere in this league, and we're seeing good young quarterbacks come up each year through the draft. So it's a league saturated with good quarterbacks, which is really interesting. I don't think we've seen this in a long time. And then the second thing that I'm noticing from this offseason is how little value teams, I think, should be putting onto their running backs. I mean, you're seeing Gurley, who was arguably the best player in the league in 2017, getting thrown away for peanuts off to Atlanta. Same with David Johnson. I mean, the running back position, teams are just going to churn through these guys. So, I mean, it's a violent league. Running backs it's a tough position for them, but I think that teams are going to start learning that if they invest too much money in the running backs, that it might come back to hurt them in the long run, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to see what the Giants do with Saquon next year, because everything screams pay him, but maybe not, especially if he picks up another injury this season. That would be worrying. But then you've a number 2 overall pick on a running back, so that's a worrying situation. And
maybe I may have contradicted myself a little bit, because obviously I just mentioned that I was glad that we locked down McCaffrey for big money, but
I think he's a bit different. I think because of what he brings, he's a bit different.
I don't think he carries the brute weight of just running. I think he's a more dynamic player. He can, hit the slant. He can go for these little, routes every now and then. So I think he's a bit more dynamic than some of the other running backs for sure.
He doesn't get hit either. That's the thing with him. He's so elusive that even when he runs up the middle, he doesn't take those massive hits. It's very like Emmitt Smith-esque, where he was always the best at, like, he didn't run anyone over, but in really short spaces, he was really good at just not taking big hits. So I see no reason McCaffrey, he's a ridiculous athlete as well. Yeah. So there's no reason McCaffrey can't be good for years to come now.
No, completely agree. And God, you wanted to pick out sort of your favourite sort of under the radar move. I know mine first. I there were a couple that I really liked, of people just filling needs and with solid players. I liked a lot DJ Reader to the Bengals as a run stuffer alongside Geno Atkins. I think that really ramps up their defense. Obviously, much needed improvement. They were the worst defense in the NFL last year, particularly against the run. So I think that's a big fill. I also like Brian Bulaga to the Chargers. I know you pay high for tackles in free agency, but I really like that. They were 2 that I picked out. We'll come to you, Jack.
My most underrated, and probably a bit of bias, but it's the Eric Flowers deal for Miami. I think people forget. People like to mock Flowers, and rightly so, because he was such a huge bust with the Giants. Went to the Jags, got slightly better with the Jags at tackle, then went to Washington and got much better when he moved inside to guard. And even if you just get sort of above average guard play out of him, which he was much better than that in Washington, but even if that's all you get, 10 million a year for 3 years really isn't that much. I'm sure they can get out of it after 2 years if he's not good. So I think with the cap going up constantly as it is, 10 million a year for sort of above average guard players, very good. And the reason I say it's underrated is because they caught a lot of flack for it because of Flowers' reputation. But I think the player himself is actually much better than the criticism would say.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. One of my good friends is actually a Giants fan, and he said, "Why were we not back in the market for him?" And to come in and play as a guard, two completely different positions. And like you said, when players carry reputations in mind, it's never a pretty process. Ben, did you have a move that went under the radar?
I hadn't really prepared much for this, but I think possibly Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints.
I like that a lot.
I think just because he is, getting towards the twilight of his career, maybe it went under the radar a little bit. But this guy was torching the Saints, just 2 seasons ago. So I think they remembered that, and it was a easy, quick fix for them.
Yeah, completely agree. And pairing him with Michael Thomas gives someone to draw some more coverage away from Thomas, who is just a catch machine. I'm quite keen to get into the draft stuff, but just finally, what team do you think has improved most over the last month or so?
To me, I think Arizona, personally. I was going to go with Miami just because they were starting from such a bad base point off last year, and then Byron Jones and all these other guys they bring in. But for me, it's Arizona. I think DeAndre Hopkins, as you said, one of the 3 best wide receivers in the NFL. I love the Devondre Campbell move as well, adding some speed at linebacker, which has been a massive position of need for them for years now. They're just constantly throwing first-round draft picks at it to try and fix it. But I think he will give them a lot of stability and some good speed there. So for me, when you add one of the best 10 players in the NFL, you have to be considered the most improved for me. So everything lining up for them to have a big year, at least offensively. I still don't think they're quite yet as a team in total, but very exciting times for the Cardinals.
And you, Ben?
I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to stick with the Bills. I seriously would not be surprised if they won the AFC East this year.
Yeah, no, I'm siding with you there. Again, I just love what some of these big teams did. I love the Chiefs keeping Sammy Watkins there. I know people will say a lot about him, but I think very much the theme is the rich getting richer. And there is I know you touched on it at the start, Jack, with the reliable teams to look at the draft. There are just a set of franchises that you just know, and the Saints and what Peyton has done there, though I know sort of around 2014, 15, there was a little bit of, is he finished, is Breeze finished, and what they've done is almost starting to look Patriots. They've had a team that's in a chance to win it for the last 3 years, and I don't see that changing anyway this year at least, and even beyond that, if they can find a successor to Breeze. Loved what they did with Sanders, and again, the Ravens, you mentioned with Campbell, what these big teams do, and again, even with us with the Eagles, Hassan Ridgeway, adding him with Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay trade filling a big need.
Hargrave's a huge signing for them as well.
Yeah, from Pittsburgh. So I think these rich teams, and obviously I mentioned the 49ers earlier, being active is the big thing to note for me, and that so maybe more of a sit on the fence answer. We'll move on.
To be fair, just quickly, you're right though. I mean, smart teams do smart stuff and they stay good, basically. So there's no science to it. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah. Right. We will get into that. Actually, we want to. Lots of teams have been releasing new uniforms and new gears. Chargers' favourite, clear.
Without question. I had the Browns down before the Chargers released it because I love what the Browns have done. The classic look. Perfect look for them, but those Chargers uniforms are like some of the best I've ever seen. The blue with the yellow trousers is mind-blowingly good.
I like the dark navy blue with the like yellow trim, or like the gold
color
trim.
rush. Yeah,
very very sleek.
Right. Well, Perfect. Well, that leads us nicely into the NFL draft, the first ever virtual NFL draft, and probably the last. I'm going to go out on a whim and say it will be the last. Yeah. We were expecting Vegas, the players coming in on that little boat up to the stage. It won't quite be like that. It'll be Goodell in his basement, I believe. There will be fans of that team on Zoom in the background, I've heard. That's an interesting concept. I think we'll start with the quarterback position because, again, another draft where I think people are a bit unsure. There are obviously a couple that they think can be franchise quarterbacks, but no one. Again, there's maybe not even a dead cert. Even with Joe Burrow, who probably what I've seen as the most unpredictable draft of years. The only thing predictable is Burrow going one to the Bengals. I think you'll both agree with me there. I'll come to you first, Jack. What is your thoughts on this year's quarterback class, and where do you think things might go?
Overall, I'm pretty high on this class. You mentioned Burrow. I think he's very much in that sort of Matt Ryan, Tony Romo-esque thing where if he hits that, but I think he's probably, with his competitiveness and a lot of the stuff about him, he's got an even higher ceiling than those guys. So I like him. But I think Tua's the best in the class. If he didn't have any injury things, I would take him number one if I was the Bengals. It's like 2 years of production and all this sort of thing. I think he's fantastic. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan personally. I think he's got a lot of good tools. I think it happens sometime in the media where for some reason, like the media scout people just don't like a prospect, and that consensus just builds around him where it's like, I don't know whether it's because he's quite quiet, which it was weird because that wasn't the case with Mariota. Everyone loved his sort of skills. I think Herbert's a better prospect than him coming out personally. So I'm high on those top three. I love the Jordan Love tools. Again, similar to Stidham in a sense, where he's sort of a distressed asset. 2 years ago, he had a really, really special season, and people were talking about him very highly. All his talent left last year. His coach left, and he had a much worse season where he said himself in some interviews where he was just trying to do everything and force everything. But again, I think he needs a bit of, that does a lot of damage to a player. I think a bad year like that. So he needs a bit of time to sort of repair his game a little bit. But in the right situation, I think he'll be excellent. And then I'm a big fan of the second tier guys. You Jake Fromm's, Jacob Eason, Jalen Hurts especially. I think his arrow is pointing up quite sharply. Took big strides, obviously, with Oklahoma. But then even the mechanical stuff, going to the combine, he just looked much more sound mechanically. And so I think he's not ready to start right away, but he's got the intangibles you look for. He's got the leadership, the toughness. He's incredibly smart. I think floor for his 12, and he'll get plenty of money as one of those guys. So I'm a big fan overall of this class of quarterbacks, to be honest. I think obviously it's very unpredictable other than Burrow where they're going to go. And then poor Justin Herbert has sort of been the smokescreen bait for a lot of teams where the Bengals were saying that there's people in that organization that love him. The Giants recently, the smoke's coming out about them doing a lot of work. The Dolphins, obviously. And then the Patriots saying they love him. So whether it's all true, I tend to believe a lot of it is true because I think teams are much higher on Herbert than the media scouts are, or whether it's just a ploy to get Tua to drop to other teams. We'll find out tomorrow, I guess. I don't think Tua gets beyond 5 personally with the Dolphins, but you never know.
And you Ben, what is your thoughts on the quarterback situation?
Well, I mean, a lot of the same, to be honest. I really like the class. I actually wanted to pose a question to you guys. How long do you think, or do you think that Jalen Hurts will ever earn a starting position in the NFL?
I think a lot of it depends on fit and situation, but the talent is there. And I think if particularly a lot of talk somewhere like New Orleans, somewhere like Green Bay, somewhere like New England. I'm not convinced the Patriots would go there. I think somewhere like Green Bay could be a really, really good fit. You go there, you've got LaFleur. He is an offensive-minded coach. You can sit behind one of the best to ever do it, Aaron Rodgers, in a similar situation to Rodgers himself. I think any quarterback who ends up behind Breeze, behind Rodgers, is going to be putting himself in a strong position. So I think a lot of it depends on that. But I think Hurts has the ability and the potential. And you watch his tangibles; they're all there. And he's another one of these quarterbacks who has a very, very high ceiling, similar to Love, and similar to what you'd say about someone like Mahomes, someone like Jackson over the last few years. There are, and Hurts fits that mold of the modern day quarterback as well. So there is every chance that he can do. Obviously, I don't know what you think about that, Jack.
I love Jalen Hurts. I think he's so high character that he's going to stick around in the NFL for a while anyway, even if it's as a backup. Like his leadership and his smarts and all that, like it's so valuable for franchises. To me, I think he needs to try and end up with someone like the Vikings, the 49ers, the Rams, those sort of teams, in the sort of Kubiak, Shanahan sort of mold, where he's going to be on the move the whole time. He's going to be a lot of play action stuff, and he can just sort of, at least early on, I think that's where he would get the most success, and he could learn behind some decent guys and then potentially take over. But to answer your question directly, I think he's definitely going to start games in the NFL. I think his talent is too tantalizing, and he's such a high character guy that even if his abilities don't get to the point where he's good enough to start, people will take chances on him because he's such a high character guy, and teams will really like that about him.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what I said earlier, it's unfortunate that the league is so saturated right now with good quarterbacks. But I think going back to the character thing, I mean, Jalen Hurts knows how to take that sort of backseat role. Even if he doesn't prefer it, he does it with grace, I would say. And I think, like Alex mentioned, that if he was sort of taking that Jimmy Garoppolo learn from the master type situation, that he could really blossom if he took a backup spot behind one of these really, really high caliber guys.
Yeah, spot on. Well, obviously, I know you mentioned tackle potentially being an option for the Dolphins at 5, and it's very rare you see 4 sort of elite offensive linemen. I know they are all Teddy tackles, but I could see maybe Wirfs moving to guard it in the NFL. Rare to see four guys of this mold at tackle. It's such an important position to hit on. Do you think all 4 go in the top 10?
No, I don't actually. I think there's probably only 2 that would fit into I think Chris Greer, the Dolphins GM, said that he thinks there's 8 elite players in this draft, and I would say probably only 2 of those tackles would fit into that personally. So if the Dolphins don't take one at 5, I think then we'll only see 2 of them go in the top 10, but they'll all be gone by the top 20, I think, because teams will start trading up if they start slipping. So I think the Giants will probably take one of them, and then I think after that it'll be teams jumping up from like the Jets, the Browns, teams like that. They'll be jumping up to grab them. But I think they're all really good, and that's why I think they'll be the same with the wide receivers as well. I think we'll see all of those, the tackles and the receivers, gone by like pick 20.
I think some of those defensive players is people are realizing how good Derek Brown and Javon Kinlaw are, that you can't miss on them compared to, say, Andrew Thomas.
What it'll be is they'll be the as you said, the elite defensive players: Okudah, Simmons, Derek Brown, Chase Young, guys like that. They'll come off early. Then there'll be a run on the tackles where all 4 of them will go in like 7 picks between like 7 and 15 or something like that.
Yeah, and Ben, who of those defensive players, who's your favourite? Obviously, Young is the consensus pick, but for me, it's Derek Brown. I think he is going to be elite in the NFL.
He's my favourite player in the whole draft.
Yeah, Derek Brown I think he's just a game wrecker. And I bet. But do you have a favourite of those defensive players? What are your thoughts on Isaiah Simmons?
Well, I would love for us to get Isaiah Simmons. Well, I'm speaking from a Panthers fan perspective, obviously. We need to rebuild our defense right now. Losing Luke Kuechly was a big blow. But Isaiah Simmons has got that potential, I would say. So I'm very intrigued from a Panthers fan perspective to see if we can get him. Yeah.
So I think Simmons is the sort of the thing no one knows about. I know Okudah's stock has been dropping, is what a lot of the speeches, but I wouldn't say maybe his stock's dropping. I think more the rise.
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Chris Sims on his show, when he was talking about the cornerbacks, said it perfectly, where it's like No, actually, Henderson's been like, as far as the teams go, it's very much been like a 50-50 split amongst the teams this whole time. But then, like, Okuda's been pumped up for like 2 years. Everyone's been saying how good he is. So his stock was at such a high point that it was natural it would come down a little bit. But it's nothing against the player. It's just the hype sort of leveling out a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of speak that Atlanta are very in love with Henderson. So it'd be interesting to see if they come up and get that. Dimitrov has been known to be quite aggressive, so that'll be interesting. You mentioned the receivers a minute ago. Obviously, that's the big. I've never seen a draft like it, and the top 3 guys are the top 3 guys. But beyond that, it really gets spicy. But it maybe people sort of have a consensus that Jefferson might be the 4th best. I think there's more of a consensus towards that. But beyond that, it's complete lottery. But we'll start with the top 3. Ben, who do you think will have the best NFL career out of CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs?
Oh man, I mean, it's tough to say. The adjustment to the pro game is always a bit unpredictable. But I really enjoyed watching CeeDee Lamb play for Oklahoma. He's a speedy guy, so I'll go with Lamb.
And the same question to you, Jack.
I think Lamb, I agree with Ben. Lamb's the most fun to watch. It's just the way he does stuff, all the contested catches, his run after the catch. He's really strong as well. So he's just like, has that Brandon Marshall quality where like he's not going to burn past you, but he'll catch a slant. And then all of a sudden he's 30 yards down the field. 3 defenders are on the floor from a stiff arm. He's spun past one of them. And he's just really exciting. But for me, I think Henry Ruggs is clearly the best receiver in this class. For me personally, I think when you're that fast, you're going to stick around. Like, look at someone like Ted Ginn, went in the first round, wasn't particularly good, but because of that speed, I think he's in his, 13th year now. I think he's still playing. So, like, that will keep him around forever. I think Ruggs is durable for a guy who's fairly small. He's not actually that small. Like, I think Judy's actually the most sort of frail and has the most question marks of the top guys. I think they're all fantastic. So it's very much sort of picking nits between them. But I don't like the fact that Judy doesn't have the best hands. He's not a particularly elite athlete, and he's quite small. Reminds me of Calvin Ridley, who's sort of gone off the boil a little bit with the Falcons, where it's just that small sort of route runner guy. I think Judy could be an elite slot receiver, and I think that's where his future probably lies with a smart NFL team, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. He'll still be incredibly productive. But to me, it would be Lamb and Ruggs would be who I'd want to invest in long term.
Yeah, and do you have a favourite outside of that? I know the one who leaps out to me actually a couple is Brandon Ayuk, Arizona State. I think he would be below that for me. What I know, there's obviously a lot of chatter about Jalen Reagor. I prefer Ayuk to Reagor, similar type players, and particularly as a team that are looking potentially revisit. I personally don't think Jefferson will get down to the Eagles at 21, which is great. I don't think we will move up unless it's one of the other 3 falls, which is not going to happen. I think.
Yeah, it depends how much the Eagles like him. If they like him, we saw it with Dillard last year, that if they like someone, they'll happily just get up above the person they think is going to take him and grab him. So who knows?
Yeah, and I think it is a lottery. And as they say, that the teams they've spoken to have got 4 to 10 on the wide receivers in completely different orders. So we're going to see all sorts, and you will be able to be patient. Away from that, just I'm going to come to you, Ben. What do you think the biggest shock on draft night is going to be this year?
Potentially how far down Tua drops. I could see some people passing up on Tua just because of the durability issues, and that might raise a few eyebrows. Especially, it all depends on what Miami does, obviously. But if Miami skip out on him, it'll be interesting to see how far he does actually drop.
For me, there's a couple of teams that I think really hold the keys to draft night. Obviously, the Dolphins are central to that, having 3 first. You always do. The Raiders as well, I think a bit of an unknown quantity at 12 and at 19. They could do anything. I don't think anyone knows quite how in love they are with Derek Carr. There's always that chatter. I don't think they'll go quarterback, but who knows?
I think they don't want Tua to fall to them because they know they'll take him if he's there. That I don't think Gruden will be able to help himself. He's always like this with quarterbacks. So I think they'll be praying that Tua's gone so they don't have to make that decision.
Yeah. And so, Jack, what do you think the biggest shock of the night is going to be?
I think it's just how many tackles and offensive linemen are going to go. I think, obviously, we've got the 4 guys, but I think a lot of teams will talk themselves into, it always happens with tackles. I think they'll go, yeah, exactly. They'll go super high, all the 4 guys. And then you've got Josh Jones, Austin Jackson, who are sort of second tier, but still first round guys. That Ezra Cleveland guy, who I don't know too much about at Boise, who's been talked about going to Cleveland, which is obviously quite funny. But then beyond that, you've got like Cesar Ruiz, that Cushenberry guy, the center at LSU. I think Hunt is the like top guard of them thing. I think all of those guys will go in the first round. And I think we'll be looking back like, wow, because everyone talks about how teams are going to play it safe. And historically, especially with the old fashioned guys, like the GMs, like your Gettelmans and people like that, offensive line has always been sort of the safe pick. So I think we'll just see a bunch of those guys go in the first round, and it will be kind of surprising when like 10 tackles and guards go in the first round.
Yeah, I can completely agree. I think as well, we're going to see one of the most unpredictable drafts. It's always unpredictable, I think, but I think we're going to see a lot of surprises. One player I love that we haven't mentioned is Clavon Chason from LSU. I think he in terms of edge rusher, I think his stock not necessarily jumped as much as it would because of all these other players we've mentioned, and I think he could be there for a team around 15 to 20. And if you need pass rushes in need, I think Dallas are a big hit for them. Anyway, I'll just to finish, I thought I would say, what would you have as the perfect draft night scenario for your Miami Dolphins and your Carolina Panthers? We'll start with you, Jack.
Well, for me personally, it would be Tua at 5, obviously. I wouldn't want to trade up for him, just too many medical risks, I think. But if Tua falls to you, take him at 5. And then what I would do is I wouldn't make a pick at 26, personally. I would either use that to jump up to grab one of the top tackles, a Becton, Thomas, or if Derek Brown falls, use that second. Because I think there's only probably 24, 23 like legit first rounders in here. So at 26, either trade back from that to pick up an extra second or a third or something like that, or use that to get up back into like the top 10 or something to pick up, see if any of those elite guys have slid, like a Derek Brown or a Kinlaw or one of those 4 tackles, and pick him up basically. So make 2 picks in the first round tomorrow, and I'm happy as long as one of them's a quarterback, and then hopefully you can get one of those tackles would be my ideal scenario.
Yeah. And you, Ben?
Well, we desperately need some reinforcements on the defensive side of things. As much as I would love to get a different quarterback besides Bridgewater, we desperately need to replace Luke Kuechly. And we also released James Bradbury at cornerback, so we kind of need a cornerback as well. So I'm suspecting that we'll go for more defensive type picks, which is smart. But it hurts a little bit because it would be nice to go after one of these dynamic quarterbacks, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I mean, if you can get an Okuda or a Simmons or a Henderson at 7, which I think you will be able to, obviously, I think
I like Simmons. Yeah,
depending what happens, quarterback, I think it's a no-brainer. And that same, I actually would...
It hurts, man. We're
Pardon?
Sorry to interrupt, man. I'm running on a bit of a delay here, so I keep interrupting you guys. But yeah, it just hurts. Like we're definitely going to be on the rebuild here, and I think our fellow NFC South teams are really rebuilding well. The Tampa Bay obviously made the big moves, and then I think the Saints are going to be dangerous again this year. So it's not looking good for the Panthers, to be honest.
No, but it is a very much a new regime, and Tepper and Rule are going to aim to sort of build it up classic style. So you just don't know where that's going to. I'm intrigued to see where Fromm and Eason go at the back of if it's back of the first, if it's early Friday in the second. I think if they're there around between 25 between sort of 24 to 32. As you say, there's only maybe 23 first rounders. I think a team with either an old quarterback or a quarterback needed is definitely a big candidate to trade up there.
There's one team always does something crazy and stupid like that. So I don't think any of those guys are worth a first round. I think they're sort of back end of the second round, if anything. But someone will do something stupid. Like the Broncos traded up and took Paxton Lynch, like one of the worst prospects I think I've ever seen. So someone's going to do something stupid. And that's part of the fun of the draft, that it will happen at some point. Like when the Saints jumped up like 15 picks and took Marcus Davenport, who is good and could still be elite, but he was the guy to push. He was supposedly the guy to push them over the edge in like the 2 years since, and they probably should have just taken Lamar Jackson.
For me, I think wide receiver is obviously a big need, but I think if you can't get one of the big three, I'm 50-50 on Jefferson. I'm happy to trade and stockpile. There's enough second tier talent to get later, or if someone like Jeff Gladney is there, I'd consider taking him and stockpile at the secondary level. Or again, if any of those big defensive players fall, or any tackles still, you're quite old at tackle. I'm not convinced. They are obviously high on Dillard, but having spent a first rounder on him, but I'm not convinced he's developed as they want. So I don't know. It's a wide open draft. Let's see what happens. And I don't think a running back will be taken day one, Swift or Taylor, and I just don't think anyone should touch running backs day one from now. But be interested to see where those guys land on day two, because there is some quality there. But yeah, it's going to be exciting, boys. Well, I thank you both for joining us. It's been brilliant. Great to have you on. If anything, plans for draft night, or the virtual draft night?
Just two screen it, have the Bleacher Report guys on one screen, and then have the proper feed on the TV. I think it's just how I normally do it, so I'm excited about it.
Love it. Nice to have a bit of a distraction, really, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, aside from the fact that I would be this excited about it anyway, with the added stuff of being locked down, it's especially exciting.
And nice for the sport to get some eyes. Because
and some money, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Probably some beer and wings for me.
Yeah, standards.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's on at a normal time for you, isn't it, if you're back in America?
Yeah, perfect. Well, I will be back again at the end of this week with another special. And Jack's the first of a sort of alumni guest to appear. We will have some more of that coming over the next few weeks. Got some exciting things planned for you. But first, the last thing to say is, I guess, thank you again, both to you. It's been brilliant to pick your brains, and I hope your team's happy drafting, I guess. And yeah,
so do I.
Look after yourself, stay safe, stay at home.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Follow the Sports Gazette, follow Jack on Twitter. Yeah. Drop your Twitter handle.
At JNev94.
And Ben at BChap12, I believe.
Yep.
And follow the Sports Gazette, more great content over the next coming weeks from all of our writers across the country. That's enough from me for today. And the guys, I'm Alex Bartlett signing off for Jack Nevill and Ben Chapal. You've been great. Thanks, guys.